Wait a second. What if I told you that before fire was even a thing, your distant caveman ancestor was out there pulling off a winter survival hack that most of us modern softies couldn't even last 24 hours doing? No campfires, no fuzzy hoodies, no heated blankets, not even a sad little space heater to hide under when the wind hits, 20 out of nowhere. We've all seen the cartoon caveman rubbing two sticks together like his life depends on it, right? But here's the wild truth. For almost a million years before anyone figured that trick out, these guys were thriving in Ice Age conditions that would make your local winter hiker tap out before finishing their first granola bar. And no, they didn't just huddle under a pile of mammoth fur and call it a day. That's the boring, basic textbook lie everyone's been feeding you since 5th grade. Today we're breaking down the actual, weird, super underrated tricks pre-fire humans used to absolutely dominate the dead of winter. And by the end of this video, you're gonna look at your thermostat and go, wait, am I the weak one here? First off, let's kill the biggest myth you've ever heard about early humans. Everyone's like, oh duh, they migrated south. They just walked to Florida where it's 70 degrees all year. Problem solved. Bro, no. That's not how that worked. First of all, back in the pre-fire era, the ice sheets were so far down that even modern-day Spain, France, and parts of China were getting hit with 30 winters for months on end. And you think a group of 20 people with no maps, no cars, no portable snacks are just gonna casually stroll 2,000 miles to a warmer place without freezing to death halfway? That's insane. Recent archaeological digs in Germany found pre-human settlements dating back 1.2 million years, way before any controlled fire evidence exists, with zero signs that those people bailed for the winter. They stayed. They lived there, and they didn't just survive. They were hunting big game, making tools, having a good old time, while the snow was up to their knees. How? Let's start with the most obvious hack that no one talks about. Their bodies were literally built different, but not in the way you think. We're not just talking about, oh, they were hairy like apes. That's the other dumb myth. Early Homo erectus had already lost most of their thick body fur by this point, same as us. Wait, that's right. They were basically as smooth as you and me, walking around in sub-zero temps with no fur, no fire. What the heck? But here's the wild genetic trick they had that we lost. Brown fat. Not the boring white fat that sits on your stomach after you eat a whole pizza at 2 a.m. Brown fat is the supercharged fat that burns calories directly into heat, no shivering required. Modern humans? We barely have any of it left, mostly just tiny little pockets around our necks and shoulders that activate when we're really cold. But pre-fire humans? They had brown fat spread all across their chests, their backs, their arms. Studies from the Journal of Human Evolution found that these guys could generate almost 30% more body heat passively than the average modern adult without moving a single muscle. That's like having a little internal space heater running 24/7, no electricity needed. And you know what's even funnier? Most of us today have so little brown fat that if you tried to sleep in 30-degree weather with just a t-shirt on, you'd wake up shivering so hard you'd chip a tooth. These guys? They'd be taking a nap after a big meal and be perfectly fine. That's not even fair. But wait, that's not all. Because even with superpowered brown fat, 20 is still 20. You can't just walk around in the open in that weather and expect to be okay. So what did they do before they invented houses? Before they even figured out how to make a simple tent? They didn't build shelters. They stole them. Wait, what? Yeah, you heard me right. Back in the Ice Age, giant cave hyenas and saber-tooth tigers were digging out massive underground dens, some of them 10 feet deep, lined with grass and fur, perfectly insulated from the wind and the snow. And early humans? They were the original squatters. They'd wait for the big predator to leave to go hunt, roll up in a group of 10 or 15, chase off any leftover cubs, and claim that pre-built luxury winter den as their own. Archaeologists have found tons of these sites in Europe, where you can see human tool marks mixed in with hyena bone fragments, dating back way before any evidence of human-built structures. People used to think those were just places where humans drag their dead prey, but no, they were crashing in someone else's winter rental. No security deposit. No landlord yelling at them for making a mess. That's such a power move. Imagine being a 200-pound saber-toothed tiger, gone for 3 hours to catch a deer, and you come back to find 12 cavemen sitting in your house eating your leftover snacks. You'd be so mad, but you also can't fight all 12 of them, so you just have to go dig a new den. That's comedy gold. And here's the next trick that breaks everyone's brain. They didn't wear clothes. Wait. hold on. Before you yell at me in the comments, I'm not saying they walked around naked. They didn't have sewn clothes. Needles for sewing fur together don't show up in the archaeological record until about 40,000 years ago. We're talking about a million years before that. So no jackets, no pants, no hats, no socks. What did they use? Animal wraps. But not the little fur blanket you're thinking of. They'd take a whole fresh animal hide, still warm from the kill, wrap it tight around their entire body, and let it dry on them. The hide would shrink as it dried, forming a custom, perfectly fitted second skin that trapped a layer of warm air right against their body. And the best part? The fat and the blood still left in the hide would act as a windproofing layer. Modern tests done by anthropologists showed that these fresh hide wraps are actually 2x more wind resistant than a modern wool coat. You could be out in a 30-mile-per-hour blizzard, and that wind isn't getting through. Everyone's like, oh, my Canada Goose jacket is $1,200. It's the warmest thing ever. Bro, a caveman with a dead deer wrapped around him is warmer than you, and he didn't pay a cent for it. That's embarrassing for us. Wait, but what about when it's nighttime? The temperature drops even more. You've got no fire. How do you not freeze solid in your sleep? Here's the hack that no one ever talks about. Group stacking. Not just a little huddle. We're talking 20 to 30 people, all piling on top of each other in layers, like a human burrito. The guys with the most body heat, the young strong hunters, they'd be on the outside of the stack, blocking the wind. The kids and the elderly would be dead in the center, surrounded by 5 layers of warm bodies. Anthropologists did the math on this. A stack of 25 human bodies in a 30-degree room will generate so much collective heat that the center of the pile hits 90 degrees. No external heat source needed. And you know what's even funnier? This is way more efficient than a campfire. A campfire loses 90% of its heat straight up into the sky. A human stack? Almost zero heat escapes. All that body heat is trapped right there in the pile. You've seen college kids do this at a music festival when they forget their tent, right? That's not a new trend. That's a 1 million-year-old Ice Age survival hack. TikTok trends are just reinventing prehistoric technology, and no one's talking about it. But hold up, we're missing the biggest, most insane part of this whole story. What do you eat when it's winter? All the plants are dead. There's no berries, no nuts, no vegetables. You can't just go to the grocery store and pick up a bag of chips. Everyone assumes that pre-fire humans were starving all winter, right? That they were barely scraping by, eating whatever they could find. But that's the opposite of the truth. Ice Age winters were the easiest time of the year for them to hunt. Wait, how? Because all the big game, mammoths, reindeer, giant elk, they're moving slow, in the deep snow. Their legs sink into the snow, they can't run away fast. And humans? They had learned to run for super long distances. Persistence hunting, right? In the winter you don't even need to run that fast. You can just walk after a mammoth that's stuck in a snowdrift and stab it with a sharp rock. And when you take down a full mammoth, that's 3,000 pounds of pure, fatty meat. That's enough food for a group of 20 people to eat for 3 whole months. And guess what? In that 10 weather, the meat doesn't go bad. It's naturally frozen. Perfect freezer storage. They didn't have to cook it, either. Their stomachs were way more acidic than ours. They could eat raw frozen meat no problem. No food poisoning. No stomachache. They'd just chow down on a frozen mammoth steak, get a huge hit of calories, and their brown fat would turn that straight into body heat. That's the ultimate winter meal. You're out here eating a sad little salad for lunch and wondering why you're cold all day. The caveman is eating a 2-pound chunk of raw mammoth, and he's over here sweating. Who's the real chump here? Now, let's talk about the myth that everyone repeats like it's fact, that fire was this revolutionary invention that immediately made humans superior, that as soon as we got fire, we stopped being cavemen and became smart. But guess what? Recent studies show that humans were living in cold Ice Age environments for almost 800,000 years before we had consistent, controlled fire. That's longer than the entire time from the invention of agriculture to today. That's hundreds of thousands of generations of people who never once lit a fire, who never cooked a single meal. And they were totally fine. They weren't miserable. They weren't dying off left and right. Their population was growing. They were spreading across entire continents. Fire didn't save us from the cold. We already mastered the cold, long before we ever figured out how to make fire. Fire was just a nice bonus, a cool new toy we got later that let us make food taste better. That's the total opposite of what every documentary has ever told you, right? You ever stop and think, Why no one ever talks about this? Because it's way less dramatic than the caveman discovers fire. Humanity is saved. Hollywood story. The real story is way more badass. We didn't need fire to conquer the ice. We did it with just our bodies, our smarts, and a whole lot of chaotic group teamwork. And here's the funniest part of all this. Modern humans have gotten so soft that we've forgotten every single one of these tricks. We see a 50-degree day, and we're putting on a puffer jacket and posting on Instagram about how it's freezing outside. We set our thermostats to 75 degrees in the winter, and we're still wrapped in a blanket, drinking hot cocoa. Meanwhile, our ancestor 1 million years ago was out there in a snowstorm, chasing a reindeer, wearing nothing but a deer hide. No fire, no problem. Are we actually evolving backwards? Think about it. If you got dropped off in a remote forest in the middle of winter, no phone, no lighters, no gear, how long would you last? 2 hours? 3 hours? Most people wouldn't make it a full day. But the pre-fire humans were doing that their whole lives. And they were thriving. That's such a humbling thought. All our fancy technology, all our warm clothes, all our heaters, and we're way worse at surviving the cold than the guys we call primitive cavemen. Wait, but let's address the elephant in the room. You're in the comments right now typing, but wait, what about frostbite? How did they not lose all their fingers and toes? Great question. Because they had another weird little biological hack that we've lost the ability to do easily. It's called the cold-induced vasodilation response. When your fingers get really cold, your body automatically opens up all the blood vessels in your hands to send a rush of warm blood to them, so they don't freeze. Modern humans? That response is super weak. If your hands get too cold, they just stay cold, and you get frostbite. But pre-fire humans, that response was off the charts. Studies on modern indigenous populations that still live in Arctic conditions show that their hands can stay at 50 degrees in freezing water for 30 minutes, no pain, no frostbite. Early humans had that trait turned up to 100. They could be digging through snow for an hour with their bare hands, and their fingers would be totally fine. No numbness, no damage. We've bred that trait out of ourselves because we never use it anymore. We always have gloves. We always have warm houses. Our bodies don't even bother turning that response on. That's wild, right? We literally evolved away superpowers because we got too comfortable. And you know what else? They didn't waste energy trying to stay 100 degrees warm all the time. They accepted that it's cold, and they worked with it, not against it. Modern us, we panic the second the temperature drops below 72. We're so used to perfect, constant warmth that any little chill makes us miserable. But pre-fire humans, they'd be active during the warmest part of the day, hunting, gathering, doing all their work. And when it got super cold at night, they'd pile up in their den, stack on top of each other, and sleep for 12 hours straight. They didn't fight the winter. They worked around its schedule. That's such a smart way to live. And we've completely forgotten how to do it. We're up at 7 a.m. in 20-degree weather, driving to work, complaining the whole time, wondering why we're tired. The caveman's schedule was, wake up when the sun is warm, go chase a deer, eat a bunch of meat, hang out, go to sleep when it gets dark. That's way better than your 9 to 5, let's be real. Let's also bust another tiny myth while we're here. People say, oh, but they must have hibernated, right? Like bears. No, that's not true. Human bodies can't hibernate. We don't have the biological ability to slow our heart rate down that much for months on end. But what they did do is something called torpor stacking. They'd all pile into that den, lower their activity levels way down, move as little as possible, and basically hang out in a low energy state for weeks. Weeks, at a time when the blizzards were too bad to go outside. They weren't asleep the whole time, but they weren't running around wasting calories either. They'd tell stories, make new stone tools, take care of the kids, pass the time until the storm passed. That's way more efficient than trying to go out and hunt in a blizzard. And guess what? Recent archaeological evidence from a site in France shows that groups of humans stayed in the same den for 6 whole months during the Ice Age winter. No trips outside, no fire, no issues. That's insane. 6 months stuck in a hole with 25 other people, no Netflix, no TikTok, no phones. And they didn't kill each other. That's a level of social skill that 99% of modern people do not have. Can you imagine being stuck in a 10-foot room with 25 of your relatives for 6 months? You'd all be fighting over the last snack by week 2. These guys were making it work. They had to have been the most chill, low-drama group of people ever. Now, let's talk about how all this changes what you think about human history. We've always been told that fire was the big turning point, the thing that separated us from the animals. But if we could survive and thrive in the Ice Age for almost 1 million years without it, that means we weren't weak, helpless creatures waiting for a magic invention to save us. We were already apex predators. We were already the most adaptable creatures on the planet. Long before we had any of the fancy technology we think we can't live without. The real superpower of humans isn't fire. It's not tools. It's not even big brains. It's our ability to work together in huge groups, to stack our bodies for heat, to share food, to take care of each other when it's freezing outside. That's the thing that let us conquer the cold. That's the thing that let us conquer the cold before we ever had a single piece of technology to help us. That's way more impressive than rubbing two sticks together. And you know what's even funnier? A lot of these old tricks are making a comeback today. People are doing cold plunges. They're sleeping in cooler rooms. They're eating more fatty foods. And they're realizing that their bodies are actually way more capable of handling the cold than they thought. We've just been coddling ourselves so much that we forgot how strong we really are. Next time you're complaining that it's too cold outside, just remember, your great-great-great, add a few 100,000 greats, grandparent was out there in that exact same weather, no jacket, no fire, about to go take down a mammoth. You can walk to your car without complaining. It's not that bad. Wait, did any of this surprise you? Did you ever hear that pre-fire humans survived the Ice Age without any of the stuff we thought they needed? Drop a comment down below and tell me what you thought was the craziest part of this whole story. And if you know someone who still thinks cavemen just sat around a fire all day, send this video to them, because their whole worldview is about to get flipped upside down. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more weird, underrated history facts that your school textbook never told you. I promise next week's one is even wilder. See you then.